1940s, the United States found itself in the midst of World War II, in an all-out struggle in the Pacific with an enemy that was extremely successful in breaking Allied military communication codes.
As one war analyst put it, the Japanese were so successful in breaking American codes, military communications were made available to the enemy like sand sifting through a sieve. Clearly, the United States needed to create an unbreakable code, and the country's best military minds set out to solve the problem.
In both World War I and World War II, American Indian soldiers used their own tribal languages to devise and send coded messages that were never deciphered by enemy forces. Their words, literally, became weapons of war, spoken in a language.
In English, to know what it was, what letter it was. So it was almost foolproof. It was foolproof.
In addition to being obscure and almost impossible to understand by outsiders, the Navajo language was perfect for coding because it was not a written language. It had to be memorized, as the code itself was memorized, a task that proved to be very simple for the code talkers.
They could speak it rapidly, they could speak it imaginatively, and they could use it for all these kinds of purposes in a way that satisfied military requirements for speed and expediency.
We're looking at the code book that we developed when we formed 5th Marine Division to teach other Navajos, 33 of them. Over here is military meaning, like Africa, Guinea, Navajo, Blackies. Philippines, we call it Kayana-ish. That means floating land. Bombs, we call it a Yanji. That means eggs.
January 1, 1941. And we went from there to Fort Benning, Georgia, took our training. We started out with 17. And the time we entered the war, there was only 13 of us left. And after basic training, then they started on the different types of communications, how to operate, tear down, and repair a telephone, radio. A lot of military terms, there's no Comanche word for them. So we had to sit down and figure out a name for each. Just for instance, like guns, we just have one name for a gun, and that's Thawoy. You get in the military, you got all types of guns. You got your artillery, small arms, you got your machine guns, different caliber machine guns, and we had to work out a word for each one.
The whole nation code was developed was to code the Navajo language itself, so that not even a Navajo on the reservation can understand what the message was all about.
An observation plane carries no armament, doesn't pick a fight, just goes out and observes, and usually flies at night. And so we took those characteristics and said, well, those characteristics fit characteristics of an owl. Does very much the same thing. So the code word for observation plane became Nashja, which is owl.
It seemed the code would work.
By the end of World War II, 3,600 Navajos had served their country in various branches of the service. While there is no official number, it is believed that up to 400 of those soldiers were code talkers. For those who survived, all that remained was to return to the comfort of the four sacred mountains and deal with the horrific memories of war.
I think I find that war experience is so dirty and so humbling, unimaginable dirty that you don't forget these things.
When the code talkers were discharged from the service, it was without ceremony or recognition, just a strict warning to keep the Navajo code a secret, since it might be needed again someday.
When we got back to San Diego, we saw all these young kids. The band was marching. They were all sergeant majors. Young kids, band.